Welcome to Community Crypto on CoinDesk TV. I'm your host, Isaiah Jackson, and this week is our Payments Week at CoinDesk, where we are discussing the future of crypto and Web3 payments around the world. I'm joined now by Jude, Ogene, the General Counsel at Paxful. Welcome to the show, Jude.
Hey, Isaiah. Pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. Pleasure to have you. And I wanted to start off by asking, what do you know about the new crypto law that was just passed in the Central African Republic regarding crypto?
So, I think that the Central African Republic has made a bold first step in the Bitcoin law, hopefully the first of many. I'm still reviewing the highlights. I haven't seen the legislation itself, but I understand it to be something similar to what has happened in El Salvador, meaning that Bitcoin is legal tender in the Central African Republic. And I think it's a very momentous occasion. And for those of us who are from Africa and see the promise that Bitcoin holds in Africa, it's a cause for celebration.
A lot of the talk around the crypto industry has been, hey, it's a Ponzi scheme. It's only for criminals. A lot of, different media and reporting that is, technically untrue. So when we speak about crypto in the Central African Republic or around the continent, what are most people using it for? Is it payment? Is it businesses? What are most of the use cases currently?
It's all of the above, right? So it's payments, right? It is, again, the speed of payments. It's also making sure that they are holding, let's say you have a small trader in the market who is selling, food, and they get they get paid in the local currency. Well, given some of the risks in holding local currency, they don't want to hold it in local currency. So the first thing they do is they flip that into Bitcoin, sometimes a stable coin, but they flip it into Bitcoin because even with the volatility, right, and that's become such a bête noire in the U.S. In terms of the volatility, but the volatility of Bitcoin is nothing compared to the volatility of the local currency, and so they'll take that risk all the time. The other thing that I think is a very good use case for that part of the world has to do with remittances. Yeah, I'm from Nigeria originally, and last year, officially, there was 24 billion in remittances through official channels. I can tell you just based on my WhatsApp texts I get, other messages I get, the unofficial number has to be at least twice that. And yet it still takes a very long time. We feel like we're stuck in the analog era when it comes to remittances. And so that's a huge, huge use case for Bitcoin and other cryptos.
Oh, yes. And I'm glad you mentioned, the dichotomy between the volatility of Bitcoin versus the volatility of the local currency. Here in the States, people are a little bit used to a, stable currency. But, in other places, there is a need to hold a currency that you can actually send and receive, no matter what the volatility is. So glad you mentioned that. And you stated you were from Nigeria. Nigeria, according to Business Insider in 2021, has the most crypto users per capita in the world. So how has Nigeria become one of the top places for crypto payments? What are some of the infrastructure in place to make that possible?
So the first thing I'll say is, big up Niger. Niger no they carry last. Sorry, I just had to get that in there. But there's a number of developments, right? Some of which are coming from the user, and some of which, frankly, are coming from the government. And in the latter case, I would say unintentionally. And so in the first instance, again, you have Nigerians who are, if you know any Nigerians, very enterprising, entrepreneurial people. They are willing to take risk. They love to transact. They love to do trades. As they do these trades, right, they recognize the risks of, frankly, holding on to onto the naira, the local currency, the naira, and they don't want to take that risk. And so they're going into other forms, whether it's foreign exchange, and this is where or crypto. And this is where I think some of the unintentional moves by the government have resulted in, from my perspective, what is a welcome development, which is the increasing penetration of crypto, primarily Bitcoin in that part of the world. Because first, Nigeria needs, I think, over 92% of its foreign reserves go simply to debt service, which means the Nigerian government needs to lay its hand on every bit of foreign exchange that it can get, which means in turn that there's very significant foreign exchange controls, right? There are controls about how you can hold Forex, what you can do in terms of exporting Forex and all of that. And so given all of those restrictions, then I think users in Nigeria migrated en masse to Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies where you don't have those same kind of restrictions. And then to further compound the problem, again, from the regulatory perspective, the Nigerian government began to crack down on bank accounts that were used to facilitate crypto transactions, which just meant that Nigerian users, having sensed the utility of this Bitcoin and other cryptos for themselves, resorted to peer-to-peer and other trading methods to the extent that to mitigate that problem. And so that's where we are. So I think you see now. Bear in mind, these are huge, huge volumes. In Nigeria, in Paxful, we have 9 million users. Fully a third of them, 2 million, are from the African continent. And of those 3 million, 2 million are from Nigeria, right? Last year alone, Paxful Nigerian users did trades worth about 760 million last year. And so that's just to give you a sense of the scale of the adoption in Nigeria. In the meantime, the average transaction, if I understand it, is in probably $100 or not much more than, 100, 150 bucks. So a lot of people trading small amounts, but these small amounts from a U.S. perspective are critically important to users on the ground. And that's the thing that I think doesn't sometimes penetrate the discussion. The extent to which these aren't bros with Lambos and talking about mooning. These are small mom and pop traders who are just trying to survive.
Absolutely. And I think we need to keep this in the industry, which, as you said, the whole moon Lambos and everybody getting rich overnight is not the use case that it was intended for. So we have to realize that retail, regular everyday people trading, I think is great to see in Nigeria that you have that on a daily basis. But moving outside of Nigeria on a bigger scale across Africa, what other countries are you seeing that have a lot of activity similar to Nigeria as far as crypto payments?
Kenya is one. I think on our platform, year-over-year growth is like 165%. Ghana is another one. Year-over-year growth on that platform is about 95%. And we have others that are up and coming, not just on Paxful's platform, but otherwise, including Rwanda. So there are several countries that are moving with haste in sub-Saharan Africa in terms of crypto adoption.
Absolutely. And I think we'll see even more countries absolutely in the diaspora that will adopt it. But one thing we have to address always, as you said before, with Forex, you have regulatory controls. Do you think in the Bitcoin and crypto world that these same type of regulations will happen if there is a mass shift towards that industry?
It's a good question. My hope is not, because you don't want to kill the goose that lays the golden egg. And again, from the perspective of users in Africa, Nigeria is, as you mentioned, per capita number one. A number of other countries are vaulting up that list as well. And so I would hope that we wouldn't saddle this new emerging technology with kind of the problems that constrained the old system. We talk about leapfrogging in terms of African development. And I personally experienced it when we went from analog telephony to mobile telephony. Now, there's some issues with mobile telephony, but mobile telephony penetration has so far avoided some of the problems that were endemic to analog telephony. And so here, my argument to the government regulators would be, why would you saddle this new emergent technology with the problems of the old legacy system? So I would hope not. Having said that, I do think that, again, sometimes the regulatory bodies don't hear us when we talk about the benefits of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, and all they talk about are the risks. And so I think we need to meet them where they are, those of us in the crypto industry, and assuage some of their risks as it pertains to knowing your customer, anti-money laundering, terrorist financing and all of that. So I think to the extent that we can align around a regulatory system that addresses those risks, but again, doesn't saddle, crypto with the problems of the legacy system, we'll be fine.
Absolutely. And we need that regulatory clarity. For most people to move forward, they need that. And it would be great to have. But one thing I do see happening is that even with regulations, one thing that may be introduced are CBDCs, central bank digital currency, whether it's for settlement amongst countries or for retail. Do you think that CBDCs could sort of, play a part in shutting down the crypto industry, or at least trying to suppress it to an extent? Or do you see an open industry where more people have access?
I see a risk of the former. I'm hoping for the latter outcome, right? As you said, and as I've, argued, elsewhere, I believe that CBDCs, I wouldn't necessarily say that they are necessary, but I think that they can be complementary. And to the extent that people can take CBDCs, they can increase penetration and understanding in the marketplace with respect to e-money, so much the better. Having said that, for example, the e-Naira was just introduced in Nigeria. Well, e-Naira is still Naira, right? And so it's plagued with the same issues that the Naira has. And so until you can address those underlying problems, I don't believe you're going to see mass adoption of CBDCs. You've got to get the monetary policy right. You've got to get the fiscal policy right. And in the meantime, there stands Bitcoin. Bitcoin, has a number of features that make it superior, frankly, to any CBDC. You know how many are going to be in circulation at any point in time, because you know that there's only ever going to be 21 million, right? And when we talk about, for example, this notion of self-sovereignty, right? A lot of these African countries are trying to determine their own fiscal policy. In the case of Francophone countries, breaking away from the relationship with France, the requirement that they have 50, it used to be 65% of their central bank reserves in France. And they're saying, listen, we want to be able to determine our own fiscal policy. Well, what's good for the goose is good for the gander, in my view. And therefore, to the extent that governments want to determine their own monetary policy, and I believe that they should, how is it less the case for individuals that they can't determine their own, that they are subject to the vagaries of government policy? And so those kind of benefits of Bitcoin, I don't believe you can, as of yet, find with CBDCs, because after all, CBDCs, it's implicit in the name, they're a creation of a central bank. And that's one of the reasons for using Bitcoin, to get around that. So.
Right. And one thing I've always argued is that, CBDCs and Bitcoin may be complementary, but the working scarcity of Bitcoin and self-sovereignty you just described would actually make CBDCs better. They would have to be a better product. They would have to have some sort of use case, long term, that makes people want to use it. So that could actually work alongside each other. But one issue I would have wanted to ask you is, if we do have the introduction of CBDCs and maybe a clamp down on the crypto industry, Do you think there can be sort of a butting of heads of the retail versus sort of the governments where they're saying, hey, why are you trying to take away crypto or Bitcoin from us? Do you think that could be a problem in the future? And also, too, with some of the colonialization, like you said, could that be an issue as well?
It's a problem now, right? I don't even think we need to sort of project into the future, right? And so my hope is that people of goodwill are going to come together and discuss ways in which there can be a rapprochement and a consensus where, again, you've got CBDCs. I think CBDCs aren't going anywhere, and so I think those of us who are, and I'm not among them, but Bitcoin maximalists who say Bitcoin or nothing, right? I just think, that adherence to that position is going to put us in a very bad place, right? But to the extent that I think we can be accommodating of CBDCs, and as you say, put the products out there and let them compete in the marketplace, right? And again, I do think that the introduction of the CBDCs can help with education, can help with market penetration, can help with, the average, citizen in sub-Saharan Africa who maybe is not a trader, who maybe is a civil servant or a teacher, right? And for whom the benefits of, digital currencies aren't apparent. It can be the tip of the spear in terms of the introduction and the familiarization of these products. And so, again, I think that there's a role for both of them. And my hope is that policymakers, government regulators, institutions, and those of us who are in crypto can come together, sit down, and agree. I just, part of me, this is, I guess, my reflexive instinct as a lawyer, is to avoid, sort of taking maximalist positions. So I'm hoping we can all get along.
Why can't we all just get along, right? But you bring up a great point, as you stated. We would like to see that, but sometimes things may get fuzzy. But one thing I wanted to ask you was about Ukraine and the Russia conflict right now. We've seen them raise money in Bitcoin to support themselves. Do you think there are other countries in Africa that do the same in order to support themselves, either with Bitcoin on the balance sheet or to raise it in order to raise funds for times of war or conflict?
Yeah, I do, and to some extent that's already happening, right? And so, we've talked about the small trader aspect. We've talked about how this is not like dudes trying to moon with Lambos and all of that. What's been left out of the discussion thus far is sort of the human activist, dimension to this, and that's critically important in this discussion. So, for example, when I don't know if you've heard of the End SARS movement, but there was a movement in Nigeria last year, the year before, where there was a crackdown on activists who were protesting police brutality, and the medium when that crackdown occurred, the medium for getting money to the activists to continue to engage was Bitcoin. And so I think you can see ways in which people in the developing world, in sub-Saharan Africa, other places as well, LATAM, Asia, can leverage this sort of instrument to, again, raise funding for very well-intentioned means. So I think that's already happening.
Right. So are sanctions pretty much done at this point? Like for countries who have Bitcoin, do you feel like they affect, has the same effect as before?
Well, let me say this, as somebody being on the front lines of this, the sanctions, I think first of all, sanctions need to be imposed with an understanding as to who they're intended to affect, and they need to be pretty surgical, because Otherwise, you're going to have a lot of unintentional harm caused to people, ordinary citizens who are just going about their business. But having said that, I do think that cryptocurrencies have a benefit to them that they reside on a blockchain. They are, it's public, it's out there, right? And so to the extent that what we are trying to do is prevent people who should be prevented from having access to, to money and money equivalents, it's my contention that cryptocurrencies do a far better job of enforcing that sort of a mechanism than fiat payment systems. And so, again, that is something where as a company that is subject to US rules and regulations, we are very mindful of making sure that we are compliant with whatever rules are imposed. We just ask for discernment in the way the rules are imposed to begin with, because we don't want to throw out the baby with the bathwater. We want to make sure that innocent, bystanders are not affected.
Right. Absolutely. And as you said, it should be specific to whoever you're trying to, target. It shouldn't be blanket sanctions because, as you said, it could affect a lot more people than it should. And one thing I want to jump to here is talking about the future of payments at Paxful, specifically at other places. Some of the innovations like Lightning Network. Have you seen a lot of development around that? And do you think that could usher us into a medium of exchange era for Bitcoin as well as other cryptocurrencies?
Yes. The answer to the question is yes. Yes. All of those questions is yes. Yes. A big believer, big fan of Lightning Network. We use it as Paxful. So it sort of obviates some of the criticisms that have been thrown Bitcoin's way in terms of, throughput speed, how long it takes to mine a block and all of that. Well, Lightning payments just, dispenses with that problem. So it's a solved problem from our perspective. And again, speaking just personally and not as a representative of Paxful, what I'm really interested in is, living in the United States and having the ability to send money almost instantaneously to my cousins, my aunts, my uncles in the village in Nigeria. And that is, I think, going to be huge. And it's something where I think, the Lightning Network can really help with. And so I do think that, we're well on the way to Bitcoin being not just a store of value, but a medium of exchange. And I'm very excited about that.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I believe we all are. Everybody I've spoken with who has mentioned the Lightning Network has spoke glowingly about it, how cheap the fees are, how fast it is. And when we discuss payments around the world, this seems like a great way for that to happen on a secure blockchain. So I want to thank you for coming on today, Jude. Thank you so much for your time.
All right. Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
Thank you, Jude, for coming on the show today. And that's it for this episode of Community Crypto. I'm your host, Isaiah Jackson, and every week we're building a global community with local crypto groups. Be sure to tune in every Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern on CoinDesk TV. See you then.